Hello, my name's Matt Corral. I'm the design director for a company called Ultraleap in Bristol in the UK. I work as a user experience designer, and I've been doing that for about 10 years or so. Prior to that, I worked as a product or an industrial designer, so I've been in the design industry about 17 years or thereabouts. I wanted to start making a series of these videos to answer some of the most common questions I get from people who are just starting out, or you're studying, or you would love to become a user experience designer, because I'm conscious how confusing it can be. It's a very young industry, and it's not all that well organized sometimes, and it can be kind of difficult to understand what the jobs are and how you're supposed to get into it and that kind of thing. Today I'm going to be answering the question, how do I break into the industry? How do I get my first job as a UX or user experience designer? So I'll start by saying, about the industry, the good news for those of you who want to get into it is that there's this huge demand for people who can be good UX people right now. In all different industry sectors, tech startups, finance, government, charity, retail, all over the shop. All these different companies and organizations are, they're trying to get more customer-centric in a way. They want to launch these slick, well-considered digital services. They want to get in touch with their customers more. They want to be known as innovative companies. They're experimenting with new tech, like VR and things like that. They're probably still finding their way in a lot of these areas, but they know that they need people who can help them to do that stuff, and being a UX designer is an important part of that puzzle. So there's job opportunities all over the shop. The flip side to that is because a lot of these companies are kind of starting out, they don't necessarily know what makes for a good designer. And this is something else we might touch on later. You'll be going into jobs where it may not all be set up and established what a designer is and what they do. So that, part of being a UX person is having to have a good grounding in all, how you work well and what are good skills, because you'll kind of be required to bring them with you and teach companies when you get there. Now it kind of varies, it's not the same everywhere. Some places are really mature in terms of design, but I got to make that clear to people that the whole industry is a bit of a wild west right now. There's not much standardization, and this kind of brings me to my first point, really, that people are coming in from all different sectors and all different areas. So I was trained as a product designer. There are people in other aspects of design who are transitioning in. There are people who are coming from psychology and an understanding of human behavior. There are people who are coming from a more technical background, who might be coders, etc. Even people who are perhaps a bit more in product management and things like that. So when you work in this industry, you'll have colleagues who are from all different walks of life who've come in to become a kind of user experience person. And it means their skills are going to vary a bit and they'll have totally different qualifications. So, that's the first and most important point, is that there's nothing stopping you really, because there are no minimum entry requirements, and you can be from whatever background and skills, your skills can be quite different to some of your colleagues, and you can still become a user experience designer. It's all good. The flip side to that is, for me, is that whilst the opportunity is huge and technically there's nothing stopping you getting in, you are then competing against a huge raft of people who are all very different. And from my point of view, of somebody who interviews and hires designers, that design education makes a really big difference. Those who have a degree in UX or interaction design or product design or something related usually do stand out to me. Now that's because they've had a good few years of studying design. They understand the history, they've built up their skills, they understand the theory and good process and why we design in the way we do. And they've had good mentoring and they practice these things, and that is noticeable when you interview someone who's put that time in. You don't necessarily have to study UX or interaction design, but something related will still give you that core grounding as a designer, that core skill set. There are short courses out there and there seems to be a huge growth of them in recent years. Now I won't pretend I know exactly who the latest and greatest are these days, but the likes of Springboard, General Assembly, Hyper Island, some of these names spring to mind. And from my point of view, some of them are excellent introductions to design. Some of them are cracking foundations that will get you a really good start in it, but they're not a shortcut. You'll still have to keep studying, find other ways to advance your skills, practice, get mentored. Somebody who does one of these short courses is not leapfrogging the people who are doing a degree. It's just a good, intense way to get you started in your design education. There seems to be an emergence of agencies and companies offering kind of UX qualifications, a certification that you are a designer. And I won't pretend to be familiar with them all, but again, from my point of view, they tell me you've studied a bit and they're a good tick in the box, but they're not recognized formally. So that doesn't make you a UX designer because you've done a short course and got a certificate. It just tells me you've done a bit of study and let's see what you learned. So there's no shortcut here. There are a lot of experts and frankly so-called experts in the industry who are trying to kind of put out this message. Some of it's excellent education, some of it's pretty poor, and everything in the middle. So there's no standard here. And which kind of brings me to my next point, which is the portfolio. So once we've talked about education, the next thing is the portfolio. You are going to need a CV and a portfolio so that you can interview for a UX designer job. You'll be expected to send that portfolio when you apply. So you'll send your CV, you'll send your portfolio. So probably in most cases it's online and you're sending a link to it somewhere. I do sometimes still see kind of paper portfolios, though, especially in the digital world, it's more common to have something there. You will need something, and I do sometimes hear people put out an opinion, why do I need a portfolio? It's just showing pictures of my work, it's not the main thing. But what I want to get across is because UX design doesn't really have any standardization, an interviewer like me, I need to get a sense of who you are and what you do, and there isn't really any UX course or anything that will make me confident that you can do the job. So what's really nice about a portfolio is that it shows the work, and you really, in this portfolio, you need to not just show the end result, but you need to show how you got there. So you need to be able to show me and talk me through the story of, I typically say 3 projects minimum. The story of some of your good projects, so what you were setting out to do, who you were designing it for, the research you did, the process by which you went through ideas and improved them and iterated them, got feedback from customers, and then ultimately the design that you delivered. And it's that process that interests me more in a portfolio, actually more than the end result. So the kind of things you see on Dribbble, nice, slick user interfaces are beautiful. But when I'm hiring you as a designer, it's kind of how you got there that interests me more. And that's the strength in a portfolio, is that you are going to try and bring to life the story of some projects you did and show me that, explain why you made the design decisions you did, the designs that didn't make the cut and why, and maybe even explain to me, what a workshop was and why you did it, or what a wireframe was and why you did it. That's interesting to me because I'm seeing how you think and how you work, but also I'm kind of testing out your communication skills, which is, can this designer explain how they work to a non-designer? Can they make it really clear why they did what they did? So this is why we make a portfolio, so that I, as the interviewer, can understand your thinking and your process, and I can see your communication skills. I need to know that you can explain this stuff to me. I need to know that you make good, well-informed decisions throughout design, that you don't just make what you think is cool, for example. But also, and I could do another video on interviews, you're not supposed to have all the answers either. You'll be interviewing for a junior UX design job, most likely. I know that you won't have nailed every skill, and I know that you won't have considered every facet of that design, and that's okay. A good interviewer will know that. But that portfolio and that talk that you can do through it is, for me, the best way of knowing that you're qualified for the job. All the other things, the qualifications, are that reassurance to me that you've got that training, but it's the interview where we'll really see. So part of the reason I love working in this industry is it challenges me in terms of the whole skill set that I've got. You know, it's a real mixture of technical skills and artistic and creative skills and people and psychology skills. And it's all mashed together, and for me it makes it a fascinating career, because one day I could be conducting user interviews, the next day I could be running a creative workshop with 40 people, the next day really finessing a user interface, and the next day sitting with a development team and talking through code and what's possible. It's great. So that does also mean that the breadth of skills that you might be picking up or be expected to have is pretty enormous. And I get that it can be a bit overwhelming. Oh my God, how can I master all of this stuff? Let me point out the things that I think are key, especially if you're just starting out. You know, the reason I've been banging on about design education is it's your thinking, your insights, your thinking and your ideas are your greatest value, more so than your ability to sketch or how beautiful the user interface is, or whether you can code or whatever. It's the thinking, the creative process, the thought and the insight. That's what matters most. I always talk about skills over tools and processes. So know that there isn't one process, know that there isn't one or two UI prototyping tools that are better than all the others. It doesn't matter. It'll change all the time, and a year from now we'll be using different tools or whatever. Understand a good design process. Learn why we work the way we work. Get to a point where you understand it flexibly, and I'm looking for someone who knows what's appropriate for a given job. So if we are going to do a service design job versus a native app somewhere versus a virtual reality system, we're going to work in slightly different ways, and I need a designer who would understand that it's going to flex and have slightly different skills to tackle each job. So know the process, know why we work how we do. Be able to work quickly, so be able to quickly filter through a lot of different ideas and get to the ones that really matter, to make good judgment calls as you go through, not to get bogged down in too many possibilities. Communication is a huge one for me that I think often gets overlooked. Like I said earlier, your employers are probably going to be kind of new to design, or they'll still be building up their internal skills and a team. So part of your job is going to be explaining design to non-designers. You'll be doing it a lot. I do it every day. It's part of what makes the industry so exciting, is that this whole emerging discipline. But you've got to be able to talk it, and the job is not just about putting your head down and working on something cool, as much as that I enjoy that stuff too. So the reason we talk through in a portfolio, in an interview, is so that I know that you can communicate. Can you explain why you made your design decisions? If I don't know what a persona is, can you explain that to me? This stuff is an important part of the job. Sketching. Sketching is not something that's as widespread in the digital world as it is in product design, but I still believe it's better than any prototyping tool. Learn to draw. It's fast. It means you can draw anything, not just what the tools in Axure or Sketch let you do. It'll let you bash something out on a whiteboard really fast. So learn to sketch, start investing the time in that, and you'll always reap the benefits, I think. And part of that is choosing an appropriate fidelity for deliverables. So another thing I like to know in an interview is that if we had half a day to work on something, are you going to bash out quick sketches, or are you going to labor over a detailed UI design? And then finally, the people skills. You will be expected eventually to run workshops, to conduct user interviews, maybe user testing and things like that. So, the skills you want are about creative process, communication, being able to choose the right design activity for the job, people skills to run workshops and interview people, and I really think sketching as well. And this might be surprising because there's a lot of focus on certain prototyping tools and wireframes and things like that in UX, but this is the stuff that makes people really stand out. And this is the stuff that tells me that you've got potential and you're going to grow into a very exceptional designer. Okay, let's wrap up. So the whole user experience design industry has kind of exploded in recent years. So there's a huge opportunity for the likes of you. And the good news for you is that technically there are no minimum qualifications for it. It doesn't really matter what you're studying or what job you're working in now, whatever, there's probably a route in for you. But recognize that it's kind of the Wild West and there's no best course or like excellent shortcut that you can take that will make you stand out in that regard. There's a whole raft of design education out there. If you're able to, if you can afford it, a design degree is still the best start and tells me that you know your stuff, because you'll spend that time learning about the history of design, why we do it, the theory, the practice. Get as much of that as you can. If you study one of those short courses, great, but be prepared to keep going and studying and practicing from then on. They are not a shortcut. Work towards having a good portfolio with at least 3 projects in it, and you need to be able to sit in front of someone and talk them through the story of those projects. So your CV and your portfolio will be required, and you're sending them before when you apply for a job in the first place. So you have to have that stuff kind of ready. When you get in there, the stuff that I'm looking for, the skills that will really make you stand out, are not so much about which software tools you can use or which process or which book you've read, but they're softer. I want to know that you can communicate really well and explain why you do the things you do and why you made your design decisions. I'd love for you to be able to draw, to understand good creative process, to know that you can be given interesting and unusual projects and flex your process and choose different activities that suit the job. And to have those people skills that you might be able to, run a workshop, do a user interview, that kind of thing. Remember, you're starting out, you're not supposed to have all the answers yet, and your interviewer will know that. But the things they'll be looking for in your potential will be those things about creativity and people and understanding why design is the way it is. I'm going to leave it there for today. I would love to hear from you guys of what you would like, other questions you would like me to answer. If you want to ask me anything about this, or if you have any other burning questions for me, write down in the comments, or you can mail me at matt@corralldesign.com, CORRALL. You can look at my site there and see examples of some of my work. Follow me at Corral Design on Twitter, and let me know what you think of this, and we'll do more videos if there's interest for them. All right, best of luck getting started in UX design. It's a fantastic career, it's really exciting, and I love that I'm never getting the same day twice. It's using all my skills, and I think you've made a great choice getting into it, so good luck.